Hello and welcome to another episode of the CG Garage. This is episode number 357 featuring Mallory Yund, who I have known for a long time, or I knew a long time ago. And it's going on with a trend of the podcast I've been doing lately. People I've known many years ago who have gone on to do amazing things in their careers. And I really just, I'm fascinated by Mallory, and she's really got into some specialized skill sets, which I think is fascinating that I didn't know about. Kristen, what do you think of Mallory?
Oh, well, she's great. Well, she's also a fellow Kansas Citian, kind of. She went to school at Kansas, and that's kind of where she decided she was going to do film, studied it there. And I just love her story, moving to LA. She did the grind work, like, for 3 years. And she PA'd in films a little bit, which is very hard. And she said, like, just never underestimate a PA. It's such an important role.
Absolutely.
And yeah, from that, she kind of went on to post-production, and she had a lot of great organizational skills and stuff, which helped her become a producer. And like, she's worked on Curb Your Enthusiasm, Silicon Valley, now Cobra Kai, which I'm watching tonight. And yeah, she just also kind of reveals her favorite parts of being a producer and sheds light on the quick progression of technology behind TV series. So amazing podcast.
Yeah, she was really great. I mean, she really got into, one of the specialties that she ended up really getting into was specifically about file-based camera systems, right? So it was moving away from film and tape and how that's going to work, and sort of figured out the workflows of things like Red cameras and Alexas and all of those types of things. So it was really kind of interesting. I didn't know that about her because, she and I sort of, were working together like 12 years ago. So it was before all of those specialties she's acquired since then. But I was fascinated by it, and I've always loved Mallory as a great partner. She was a coordinator for me back at Method long time ago, and I always knew she was going to go places, and in fact she has. I'm so excited to see that happen for her, and so it was really great reconnecting with her, and I was very excited to have her on. So thank you, Mallory, for coming on to the CG Garage. Okay, I don't think we have any announcements still. So beginning of the year, people are coming back from the holidays, so there's still things are catching up here and there, but I'm sure we'll have some announcements soon and some events soon. But if people want to know more about the podcast or connect on a podcast, where can they go, Kristen?
You can go to facebook.com/CG Garage Podcast or chaos.com/CG Garage. And if you'd like to watch us, go to youtube.com/Chaos Group TV.
Perfect. And if you guys have any ideas of other podcasts, we'd love to know. Chris and I have been working very hard all week, lining up a huge amount of new guests coming up. So we're very excited about 2022. But please let us know if you say, hey, I'd love to hear more about this or that. Just email us, labs@chaosgroup.com. That is where you can reach us. And of course, don't forget to leave us a review on Apple Podcast. And I think that's about it. So with that, enjoy this amazing podcast, episode number 357 with Mallory Yund.
Welcome to another CG Garage, where the Chaos Group talks. You'll know it's over when the last bucket drops. We're gonna fire off rays in high dynamic range. We know that ambient occlusion is passé. Global illumination won't lead you astray. And while image-based lighting is really swell, you need to make sure everything has Fresnel.
So Mallory, it has been, like we were just saying before I hit record, it's been 12 plus years since we've seen each other.
Yes. Literally. Like I haven't even barely seen you on social media in that time.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I think we connected on social media not long ago. I was like, Mallory, I wonder what she's up to. She was so cool. She was so fun. So yeah, it was really kind of it was really cool to reconnect with you and sort of see some of the things you're doing. I was like, I gotta catch up with her, and I figured I'll take the opportunity to record a podcast because I always take that opportunity. but when we let people know, when I met you, you were helping me out at Method. You were a coordinator, and we were doing a bunch of work together.
Yep.
Some of the Scion spots I think we were doing, or what were we? Which one of the spots we were working on?
I honestly don't remember which ones they were, but you were the supervisor on many of the ones that I was doing with one particular producer mainly. And
with Leighton mainly,
yes,
right?
Yes, correct.
Right.
Correct. Yeah. So, I think we were doing Super Bowl commercials, but I can't remember exactly which ones. And, trying to weather the changes that were going on in the company. And,
right.
But, we had a good time. I mean, we had a good family at that time.
We did. And, there's an important part, especially, I learned a very important part of when I was supervising is the connection and bond and communication you have with your coordinator and producer has to be really tight so you can really just get stuff done.
Yeah.
And I know that I can rely on you to help make sure that I don't drop the ball on a bunch of things, which I do if I don't have that help.
Oh, we all do. Yeah. I mean, I rely heavily on my team now to make sure we get everything over the finish line properly on time and efficiently. So it's important to have a good team. No matter what level.
For sure. And your career has grown to incredible heights, which I want to hear about and I'm very excited about. But I do want to know more about your humble beginnings and your excitement. And you were from Kansas originally, right? Is that right?
I went to school in Kansas, but I'm originally from Seattle.
From Seattle. Oh, that's right. That's right. Okay. And so you went to school in Kansas, but what got you into the entertainment industry? What sort of drove that interest in that way?
I mean, I was always a visual person as a kid. I watched movies all the time, when I wasn't outside. And if there was a book, the rest of my family would say, oh, well, there's a book of a story. Just read the book. And I go, but there's also a movie. Why don't I just watch the movie? It's more entertaining to me anyway. I'm not going to sit and read a book. That's boring. As a child, this is what I'm saying.
Right.
But, so, I mean, yeah, it was always there, and I was a performer growing up, and, I wasn't really thinking seriously about going into the industry until, oddly enough, it was the movie Elizabeth that came out, I think in 97 really? Or 98. Elizabeth, it was about Elizabeth I with Cate Blanchett. And, I fell in love with the story, the storytelling, the visuals, the music, what I realize now, what I really love about it is how it was cut together, how the pieces were put together, and how it was so interesting and thrilling and suspenseful, and just beautiful from start to finish. So that kind of got me into looking at film programs to go into production work. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was just like, I want to do something like that. Whatever that was, went to film school at the University of Kansas, and it was a good program for me at the time.
Right.
So I didn't really have any plans afterwards. And
did you plan on doing production work mostly, or were you looking at filmmaking of some kind? Okay.
Just getting into production, getting into features. When I graduated from school was in 2004, so television was, mainly ER as your penultimate drama at the time, and whatever sitcoms were popular. So there wasn't a lot of interest in TV for me. But I said, I got to go to LA. That's where things are happening. I'll figure it out. And it took me a little while, but I managed to figure it out.
Okay. So what was your first job in LA, and how did that go? I mean, did you just pack up your bags and sleep on some couches before you got to somene's
You have no idea how accurate that is, actually.
And you have no idea how common that story is.
Yeah, exactly. I came into LA with, a couple $1,000s, which I was like, oh, I can find my own place in a couple of weeks. No big deal. I just need to get familiarized with the town. I'm from a small town originally of 20,000 people. So little did I know. The benefit, though, when I got here on January 1st of 2005 is when I arrived in Los Angeles, is that my sister already lived here. She was living in a studio apartment in Venice. She was an actress, and I said, well, I'll just sleep on her couch for a few weeks, 2-3 weeks, however long it takes me to find my own place. So the couch, oddly enough, was very comfortable, and it's a good thing too, because I slept on that couch for 3 years. And
There you go. Yep.
we managed to make it work in a studio apartment in Venice for 3.5 years, actually.
Wow.
But
Wow.
yeah, my first job was also at a restaurant that my sister worked at called Gladstone's in Malibu.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
that's
I had no
fancy one.
experience it's serving. Yeah, I had no experience in restaurants at all. But so I got a job as a host. I did that for I would say about almost 10 months, maybe 8 months, something like that, before I was offered to come back to Kansas to take over technical management and operation management of the film school facility for 3 months while my friend who ran it was on maternity leave. So I went back to Kansas and I did that for her and for the school. And that was more eye-opening, I think, than being a student there was, for sure. It just kind of helped me see some of the skeletons in the closet, let's just say. And as the curtain is pulled back on reality. So then I got back to LA after in the winter of 2006. And my first job in the industry really was as a receptionist at a post house in Burbank when I got back.
Oh, yeah.
As entry level as a guest.
Which post house?
It's called Level 3 Post.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, still there. Unfortunately, it will be closing soon. Closing up shop soon. There's a lot of post houses that I grew up with are doing lately. But yeah, I without that job as a receptionist, I can take everything that I've done since back to that job. Everything.
Really?
Yeah. Just about. Yeah. I met people. I got an understanding of what post was like, what television was like, made some good friends, met a man I was with for 11 years.
Right.
Just so many different facets really kind of boiled down to working as a receptionist in this facility. And there's a few places I can really point to that were that have a lot to do with the path that I took, or the path that I'm not sure I should say that I took it. It's mainly just what was available to me, and I followed. I went where the doors were open.
Right. But you were always looking for something, right? You were always like, okay, I got here. I got to this step. I'm going to look to the next stone in the river to cross, right?
Yes. And I kept going back to production. So, when I was a receptionist and I made all those connections and met people, I didn't even realize I was really making connections at the time. I left that job after about 10 months and became an office PA on a feature. A big multi-million-dollar feature film with Fox. It came out as Meet Dave. It was Eddie Murphy and Elizabeth Smart. Elizabeth Banks, not Elizabeth Smart. Elizabeth Banks.
Right.
That would be weird. And that was eye-opening to the production aspect of it, because I was like, yes, I'm on the production side. I'm going to see how things really work on this side, and I can kind of figure out what a potential path would be. I always wanted to be a producer, but I was like, I don't really know how to do that. There's really no structure to be a producer. And I was learning very quickly that I really don't know what to do unless there's structure. So I was on that show for 6 months. That parlayed into a post PA gig on a pilot, which then went into another feature office PA gig on a feature called Eagle Eye at that point. Another big multi-million-dollar, big visual effects, Shia LaBeouf, and I don't really remember who else was in it.
Right.
But, Billy Bob Thornton was in it because I got to drive him home on that on that job.
There you go.
That's my best story, actually.
There's some there's some perks that PAs have, and every now and then they get to drive celebrities.
Exactly.
Or go feed their dog or something.
Totally. I mean, I would never knock the PA gig. I mean, it was, I thought it really annoying at the time, but the more I kind of grew up in this industry and as a professional and as an adult, I realized there is a lot of value to being a PA, number one. And as you grow up in the ranks, having a really good, solid PA, number two. And it is a job that I will never look down on, and I will always take seriously, and tell everybody coming in, be a PA, figure out what you want to do while you're a PA. But yeah, so after Eagle Eye, we had the writer's strike in 2008.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So that, even affected me. So, cause there was no work, and I was still trying to just find kind of PA gigs or, whatever I could find. And I ended up being a non-union extra, which is a terrible job, if I can say that. It's cash. Well, it's you're non-union, so you're getting paid $80 for 12 hours, and you're in any number of horrible conditions. I mean, the last job that I did was an overnight gig in Los Feliz. That was supposed to be an outdoor party, like a house party, a high school house party, in the summer. So everybody's wearing skimpy dresses, skirts, shirts, no clothing whatsoever, heels. We were outside next to this pool, standing in heels, the women amongst us, for close to 10 hours, and it was 40 degrees. And production did not give two shits.
Wow.
They took their time. I mean, that's their prerogative. That's what you sign up for as a non-union extra. I got terribly sick after that job and just didn't sign up for any more availability after that. Because, $80 to do that, and I wrapped at 6 a.m., that's just not worth it to me.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. I mean, and it did nothing, professionally either. I had done a few jobs, and I was just like, this is just not really what I'm feeling at the moment. So I'm going to go back on unemployment, and I'm going to wait this out. And
I saw someone on social media at one point. He was an extra, and he made a reel of his extra work, which was the funniest thing ever. It was just a bunch of shots and then arrows pointing at him in the crowd.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if you're SAG, it's not a bad gig.
Yeah,
you actually do get paid a decent day rate. And if you just really love that type of work, really love and are passionate about being around production people and talking to ADs or talking to other PAs or, and I guess that's just not, I was finding out a lot about myself over this period of time. And I just realized that's not something that I feel called to do. I am an introvert. I want to be warm. And I would rather not be on my feet for 10 hours in 40-degree weather when the directors and all the other crew are, in no joke, like North Face puffy coats down to their ankles. Wow. So that was definitely not the best experience, but I'm not, there are others that can be better. I know some people really love doing that kind of work and can string together enough, but it's not bad. It just wasn't for me.
Right.
Once the writer's strike finished, I actually went on to season 1 of the show that I had done as a pilot the previous summer. I was the post coordinator, so this is kind of technically my second job in post after being a PA on the pilot. And it was literally me and the post supervisor and a PA, and it was 12 episodes for TNT, a show called Raising the Bar, season 1. Mark Paul Gosselaar, I think it was a Botchko show, and his kind of resurgence, and I think it was really TNT's one of their first original dramas, and this was in 2008, and our season was from March to September, and in 2008 the TV season for network was still very consistently, August, September through April, May. So I did this season 1. I learned a ton. But then when we wrapped in September, there were no shows that were picking up work. I mean, all the shows were already staffed, and I was kind of stuck. I think I had just moved then into my own apartment off of my sister's couch. So, going on to and having a job immediately after that was quite important to be able to pay my, now bloated bills. So that's when I found out about the gig at Method. And so I interviewed and got hired as a coordinator at Method. I had no idea what I was doing. in the visual effects world. But again, I go back to that experience and go, well, I met Leighton, who is now one of my best friends. So beyond that, though, I learned about a file-based workflow.
Yes.
Which is going to be important, right?
Yes.
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 And I pay attention to those things, and I talk to engineers, and I want to understand how the process works so that I can do my job better. You know, I'm not just a robot, you know, do this, do that. Okay, no problem. I do my job and I go home. I want to understand, not in detail. I don't need to do it, but I just want to understand how the process works so that I can figure out how I can make improvements on how I do my job, how I can help others, how I can get ahead of the curve, how I can predict what work will need to get done and hopefully get it done sooner than maybe it needs to be, you know? That's kind of how I look at jobs. So yeah, Method, as short as it was, 6 months, it was still a good experience.
It's interesting. It was only 6 months because I remember you being there. I mean, I guess I wasn't there that long either, but I remember you being just like going at it yep, you were very, very important at that time. And, you know, considering the experience you had, you were very, very good at communicating and very, very good at just making sure everything was working. So you know, you weren't it didn't seem to me like that was your first like post-production coordinating job. Yeah. Yeah. And it was a thing. Yeah, it was a good thing. And I remember, you know, it was a hard time. There was a transition point that was going on during that time. And I think, we can talk about it now. And they were decided that they were going to have some layoffs. And you were unfortunately one of the people that was being laid off. But the thing that upset me the most is that they didn't tell me that they're laying you off. Yeah. I think I should have known this information because they're like, no, I would have said absolutely not. She's critical to my team's success. And why the hell are you doing that? Yeah. But it was unfortunately that happened. So I really sort of stood up for you and then, you know, obviously things happened, but in the end, I think, you obviously you've thrived since then. So I'm not necessarily that disappointed that you moved on, but I was really, it was really kind of a, you know, like you said, we were together for a short period of time, but I still remember that really well. But tell us a little bit about that. Like what happened since then? Obviously, like I want to know where that trajectory went and how that kept going.
Well, I mean, like I said before, I follow the doors that are available to me, and the Method door was closing. They showed me the door, although I was not locked out by security. I can say that day they give me the ability to actually pack up my stuff. But I had to go through that door. So, okay. And I think I was out of work for about a month. You know, you put the word out to your friends and your colleagues and you say, I'm looking for work. This is the situation. Let me know if you hear of anything. And I mean, Facebook was not what it is now. And so there were no like groups that you can post your resume to or whatever. It really was simply word of mouth via who you knew and then who your friends knew. So thankfully the word got out pretty well. And within a month I had another gig. Again, like looking back, I go, God, that job that I got after Method was so pivotal to my future success or being able to do my job successfully. But at the time I just thought, God damn it, I hate this job. Oh my God. It was a small post house in Burbank. Okay. Thankfully 10 minutes away from where my apartment was. So after 6 months of commuting to Santa Monica, that was great. But it was, they hired me because they were just starting to work in television. They were, before that, a completely, independent feature digital intermediate company. They would digitize film reels and do DI. They would online the reels and do the kind of finishing part of post, but solely for independent projects. When we were at Method, before I left, John Wells was shooting the last season of ER, and he was experimenting with the Red camera. Red camera had just come out. So,
Right.
and I know because we were in a Method was under a corporate umbrella at the time that also included the post house that ER was finishing at, but they didn't have the ability to, I guess, transfer the data, the media files. So I know Method was doing a lot of that and backing up to LTO, I believe.
Yeah.
I don't remember the specifics, but I do remember, that little bit because he was practicing with this camera because he wanted to use this camera for his next show, which was Southland. And there was no television post house in town that knew how to deal with files at all. It was a completely tape-based or film-based finishing medium at that point. So my little company, they hired me to be the show producer, post-production supervisor, whatever it was called on the facility side at that time for their new television client, Southland. And the client, they didn't know how to deal with TV clients. The TV client didn't want to be at that facility and didn't understand what they were doing. So they brought me in to kind of, I guess, be the conduit, like as if I had that much experience in television. I had one credit.
Right.
But they were, apparently that was enough for them. So they hired me on to, as a freelance basis to deal with this client. And what I learned at this facility, I think I was there for from 2009, technically to only 2011. So only really a couple of years. Something like that. I learned how to use a file-based workflow in television finishing. This was the only show that was doing it. The next year, 2012, did have a few more shows trying to work in files, but again, nobody else really had the workflow and the bandwidth, the processes in place in order to get the media off of the cards or a drive, however it comes to the facility, load them, process the dailies, and then do the onlines, the color correction, the finishing. I mean, this took very specialized equipment to do all of this. And that equipment is expensive, and you can't just turn around all the equipment you've been using for decades in a heartbeat when these new cameras start coming out. So it was a very slow process at the time. We did a few pilots. We had, some success, some not, but throughout the entire process, the thing that I loved about the engineers at that company was that they were learning. They took every perceived failure or every time a client pushed back on something, and they learned, they either rewrote the code that they were using, the proprietary software that they wrote in order to process the dailies the way we were doing it, in order to use the media and online the media from EDL. And they made it better. And, that was really the only time.
And you were learning along with them.
I was learning along with them. Exactly. This is a non-union facility. Yeah. So I was actually on the equipment some of the time. I was in, I had to go to New York in 2011 because this company, which started out as a company called Hollywood Intermediate, that became Next Element. And then we were purchased by Deluxe. So then we became Next Element by Deluxe.
Okay.
As Next Element by Deluxe, I went to New York for pilot season in 2011 to work out of the Deluxe facility in Manhattan, which is a beautiful facility, only because of the views of the river and everything else. But I was only supposed to be there for 2 weeks to train their in-house producers to use this equipment that we were sending out, this mobile dailies processing equipment, and then get out of there, get back to LA. I ended up staying for 6 weeks because they were overwhelmed and the clients were demanding, things. And I became operations overnight. We were processing dailies for 3 different shows on 2 different systems with 2 teams of people working those systems. And so coordinating one of the dailies coming in, when are they due? Is it New York editing bay or is it an LA editing bay? If it's LA, we have more time, and just those details of who's going to be on the equipment when are we going to process all of the deliverables, and between 3 shows and 2 systems. I ended up doing that because they just didn't have that person in their own facility or the need at the time. So we did have an operator quit in the middle of a show. So an engineer who came with me to help set up the systems and train the folks ended up doing all of the sound syncing, which was relatively automated, but you had to check it and make sure that everything's matching up. And then I was making the deliverables. I was making DNX36 MXF files for tutorial, H.264 QuickTimes for whatever digital dailies platform they were using, whether it was Pix or DAX or whatever it was. Bins, EDLs, like non-union, I could do it. And I had learned by watching and just observing and being a part of the process the entire way that, okay, no, I know how to do this. I can do this. So, you know, when pressed into action, you got to get the job done. So we come back, Deluxe closes us down, my little facility, and disperses the staff and the equipment between Level 3 Post and Encore Media. So I'm back at Level 3 Post as a post-production supervisor. The kicker, though, that you're going to enjoy this part of the story, the kicker about what happened when we were in New York in the spring of 2011 changed television. That was when the earthquake happened and then the tsunami in Japan.
Oh, right. Yes, because the tape factory.
The tape factory. There's no more tapes.
That's right.
Shows were shooting on HD tape.
Yeah, explain the tape factory because I know this story.
Yeah. Okay, so here's the kicker of this whole thing, and like right place, right time. I mean that's all that this is. Like I don't know what the actual percentage of TV shows that were shooting directed tape were, but most shows I can say probably easily 75% of shows, if they weren't shooting on film, which was very expensive to do. So most of them, I think, were not shooting on film at the time. I think most shows were shooting on tape, and they were delivering final masters for air on the same tapes. The
tapes were, which tapes were they? These were
HDSRs.
HDSRs, that's right.
Yeah. I mean, D5s, that had just, I think in the previous few years, had kind of taken over D5 because it had the ability to have 12 tracks of audio on it. A D5 could only have 8 tracks of audio. So then again, depending on who you were delivering to, they had a different requirement of tape. But, you know, you had HDSRs, you had D5s, you had digibetas, beta cams. I mean, I think we still delivered a VHS in 2008. I shit you not. Like it was just, it was, I mean, studios were still loving their tapes. And so they were shooting, they were using cameras that also shot to these tapes as well. And that is an obscene amount of tape per episode or per series. And when many series at the time were 22 episodes for a season, that is a ton of tapes. So you have an earthquake in Japan. Then the earthquake motivates a tsunami to come and wipe out so much of northern Japan. You know, there was I think there was a nuclear factory meltdown. I mean, there were just so much destruction because of these two natural disasters. The area of Japan where these tapes are made is in the area that was destroyed.
And that was the only place that these things were made.
Yeah, the only place in the world these tapes were made. So at that point, any tape that was already stateside, like, became gold. And people rushed to the available file-based cameras, which I think the Alexa, like the first generation of the Alexa camera was out that pilot season, as well as the Red camera. I think that was pretty much it at the time. And here I am in a position in my company, my little company, in a position of, well, we know what to do with files. We've been doing it.
Right.
We've been creating workflows for it. And so they shut us down, Deluxe shut us down, and then dispersed us between Encore and Level 3 Post, which were under the same corporate umbrella at the time. I was responsible for training the other PPSs at Level 3 Post in how to deal in files, how to deal on shows with files, what kind of questions to ask your clients, what are the deliverables now, how is the media coming in now? I mean, the amount of information that we now need to know from production is is a lot more than if they were just shooting on tape when things were very, very standardized. But with files, things become way less standardized. So you have to also have the ability to have custom workflows for your shows. You can't always put everybody through the same pipeline. It just isn't going to work. That's what we had been doing. That's what we developed as my little company, the little company I worked for, obviously not my personal one. And that's what we then had to train people to do at both level 3 post and encore. So that was kind of fun. I was like, oh, I know how to do this. Yeah, this is fine. And so I wrote a manual and I handed it out to everybody. You know, this is what we need to know. This is what your shows need to tell us. This is what they need to know. These are the options available to them for finishing. And I ended up training not just other PPSs, but also clients in, you know, and really walking them through this workflow as they're going through the facility for dailies and for finishing and delivery. And so I loved it. I loved doing this. And it wasn't so much about having authority, but it was about having respect. I was respected by my colleagues and I was respected by my clients. When things started to change for me was when I felt that respect was no longer really there the way that it had been before and the way that I thought that it should have been. So my clients started to, you know, after a year and a half of this, my clients just started to think that they knew more about the process. And I'm just standing back and going, okay, yeah, sure. We could do that. It's not efficient, but yeah, we could, no problem. And then my bosses started to, you know, not, you know, again, it's just all about respect.
Sure.
You know, at the end of the day, if you're, I'm not going to labor under, you know, false pretenses that it'll get better. If it steadily gets worse, then I know it's going to keep getting worse. So I put the word out to my clients very quietly, the ones that I trusted and knew and had a good relationship with. And I said, look, I am ready to jump to the show side. You know, the freelance work didn't really strike me before as something that was desirable, but now I think that it is. I think I could do this. And I was able to jump onto a show called Magic City, season 2 in 2013, in February of 2013. And I've been on shows, worked my way up since then. So what is that? Almost 9 years, I guess, on the show side. Yeah. And it's just, again, like everything that I've done has put me in a better position for the next thing that I do.
Right.
It's really remarkable. And I'm still like, wow, everything's really kind of worked out.
Have you always stuck with the post side, or have you sort of, you know, focused on all kinds of areas of the production, especially on the show side of things?
Yeah, no, I mean, ever since that second feature, Eagle Eye, I did as a office PA, and talking, God, everybody was miserable. I mean, two production offices in a row on these major features, everybody's miserable. Everybody's angry. Everybody's barking at each other. And, you know, long days. I just, you know, I did at one point apply for a DGA internship, but I was rejected because I failed to sign the second page of the application or something like that. I mean, it was something so minor, but I mean, I'm sure they get so many applications. They have to really look for those minor things to you know, kind of weed out the masses. But I am so thankful I didn't get that at the end of the day. I think, I mean, it's just, again, for me and learning how I work best and how I am able to do my job best and come home and still like myself. Production would have been a bad fit for me. I really like smaller departments, small rooms, dark rooms.
Yep.
You know, I'm an introvert at the end of the day. I could be more extroverted, but I'm not the inexhaustible, on my feet, running around, barking at people and having arguments with grip scaffers and construction kind of person. So, yeah, I mean, it's a completely different beast to be in post. I'm not going to say it's easier, but it's definitely more aligned with it's just me as a person.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. I mean, I think it's really interesting that you found this little niche of file formats, right? Like that's something that's it's like, okay, how are we going to make this? Because it's a huge amount of data, right?
Mm-hmm.
It used to be the whole thing of carrying out these big cans of film. And they still did it when I was at Method. We were still shooting certain commercials on film. It was kind of,
That's insane.
yeah. Yeah. It is kind of like, oh, wow. But, obviously, a lot of that changed, and well, there's still film. Well, Chris Nolan still shoots on film, but it is interesting that you found that niche and you made that part of your thing. What is your favorite part of producing? Like, what is your favorite thing about it that you really like?
Well, it's the combination, at least in post producing. So it can be very technical. I can be as technical or as creative as I really want to be at the end of the day, as long as I'm on the right show that allows me to do that. And, I've got schedules and budgets. So that really appeals to my OCD brain. And, I love math and I love putting things together because there is an answer, and it's not objective or subjective, that there is a specific answer. I know that if I'm, renting this many avids for this many weeks, it's going to cost this much money. What's in my budget? But then I have to get creative with the numbers too about, well, where can I pull money from? Where can I find solutions to these budgetary issues that I'm having? How can I find solutions to the scheduling issues that I'm having? So there's a good, even in just those two areas, because that's what a producer does, budgets and schedules at the end of the day.
Right.
That's what's going to define a producer. And I can I can be very technical or I can be very creative in how I put that together for my show. It's technical in the sense of equipment and software and shooting, knowing the camera that we're shooting on, knowing what file format the camera shoots, knowing how the camera shoots, what it can do.
Right.
And then you compare that with what we're expected to deliver on the show that I'm on right now. We delivered to Netflix. So what does Netflix expect from us? What kind of files do we have to deliver to whom? How do we make what we shoot into what we need to deliver? And then filling in the gaps in between. Managing the people. I do love managing my small team. I have 10, well, with composers, I guess I have 13 folks that I kind of manage on my team at the end of the day. Which I like. It's a nice size little group. If it got any bigger, all I would be doing was personnel management. I wouldn't be able to do the other things that I do. So I've got budget schedule. I've got personnel management. I have to manage my producers, the studio expectations, the network expectations, reconcile all those together. And then when we actually lock a cut, the finishing process is just so exciting to me. I love finishing because I'm a producer now. So in television, typically the department head covers sound. And then your second, whether it's a post supervisor or an AP, my second is a co-producer. He handles picture. Mm-hmm. But I'm still very involved in visual effects because that is one of my original loves. So he and I kind of work in tandem on visual effects, but he handles titling and onlines and VFX drop-ins and final dubs and delivery to Netflix and Sony. Whereas I schedule ADR with my coordinator. I attend the ADR sessions. I attend the mix sessions, final mix, playback with the producers, and we're giving notes to the mixers, and as well as final delivery. I'm helping out with that, and I love the creative potential in that process. Mm-hmm. You can really do it as much or as little as you want as a person, and I love the creativity that I get on the mix stage, or even directing some of the ADR sessions, whether it's we're adding a line because it doesn't exist and we have to recut a scene, or it's just for technical purposes. And I love working with my sound supervisor. He and I are working in tandem together on ADR and on the mix stage. And I get to be around all these creative people all the time. And I'm so lucky on my show. They are very level-headed people. There is respect. They allow me to do my job. I just, sure, it's like herding cats at times with so many people, personnel, EPs, writers, studio, network. But, you know, at the end of the day, we're all just looking for the best outcome on this show. We all want to make a great show.
Yeah. It's interesting. I've always respected the role of producers and visual effects and everything else, but I never really thought of it as being a creative role, right? Because there was a certain bias as an artist to think of that process. And then I got the opportunity. To produce something myself. I was doing a short with a friend of mine, Dan Thron, and we did this thing for VRI IRL. A lot of my listeners already know about that. But someone had to produce it, and I just said, I'll produce it, right? I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And I had a producer at her name Lisa Baru at DD. She was incredible. She is incredible. And she was sort of helping me figure out what producing is. And then I started to realize very quickly, like, oh, you know how when you get to your desk and everything kind of works? Yeah, that doesn't happen without a producer. And, you know, and it's just like, oh, right, that's my job, right? And then he's like, you know that mix session where everyone shows up and they got all the right talent and all the right equipment and everything? Yeah, that doesn't happen without a producer. Nope. And that was something that I was like, oh, and it's not just about, there's actually something really creative, like you're putting the palette together, you know? Yeah. And that's really you're letting a lot of the artists do their thing, and that's also a good thing, is stepping back and that. But sort of putting it all together was both like, when you show up on set and nothing's done, that's your fault, you know, as opposed to something else. And so I was really, really respectful of producing. Not only was I respectful of it, but at the same time, I kind of liked it. I really liked it. Like creatively speaking, I actually liked it better than an artist position in some cases. And I spoke to a friend of mine who I know, and she's amazing. Her name is Donna Smith, and she was the first female head of production in Hollywood at Universal Studios. And her first film was Raging Bull. She's an incredible woman. Wow. So she's like hardcore. Yeah. But she was like, she used to call me, she says, you know what, kiddo? I think you want to be a producer. And I was like, I think I do. I think I do want to be a producer. So whenever I speak to producers and I hear the story you just said, like putting all the pieces puzzle together, I'm like, yeah, that sounds sexy. That sounds really sexy. Yeah.
It's, you know what, it is pretty sexy, but again, I have to go back to the two worlds of creative and non-creative, I guess I should say. I shouldn't be technical necessarily, but creative and non-creative. Yeah. However you perceive that, it's just such a smorgasbord, and it can be this beautiful dance with a lot of artistic elements to it, of producing, and you just feel fucking great when everything works out. And then it doesn't. And then you have to either put out the fire yourself or light fires under other people. Right. To get them to do what you need them to do. Not everybody works the same way that you do. So it's most efficient, back to efficiency, to figure out what they need to be motivated. Everybody's going to need something different. I had to get my ass out to Echo Park last season on my show, have a coffee and a sit down with one of my editors, because that's what he needed. I can just slack another editor and say, hey, this is what's on the plate today or this week, or this is what I need from you by the end of the next week. And he goes, great, no problem. That's what he needs. So it's lots of creative problem solving in general. But again, like, God, it feels great when it works. Right. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. And for post producers, I mean, we don't get any accolades. We don't know what, like, everybody whispers, maybe they kind of know that we exist. But if there is any kind of admission that we exist, then that means that the shows don't come out of production perfectly. Right. And we can't admit to that. Oh no. Right. Yeah. Yeah, but that's the same as artists, right? Like at CZ artists, it's like, if you do your job perfectly, no one knows that there's actually visual effects there. Totally. Yeah.
And if your
Totally.
show goes perfectly smoothly, no one knows that there was a post-production producer.
Nope. Nope. Exactly. Exactly.
You're only visible if there's a fire.
Yeah. Yeah. If you screw up, everybody knows. But if you
Yep.
do your job perfectly, it looks seamless.
Hmm.
So, I mean, you
Yeah,
can't
I
get
can
into
imagine.
post-production and, expect awards and accolades and recognition for anything. You kind of have to go into that and going, I did a good job today,
Yeah.
and be okay with that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. Yeah, that's okay. I don't need the accolades. I need the
No.
fun,
Yeah.
the high fives to myself.
Yeah. Last day on a mix stage is always fun. They bring in champagne or they bring in other drinks, and you have
Right.
everybody's kind of like, oh, we can finally like breathe and like let go and unwind a little bit. And
Sure.
yes, we have the QC process, but the bulk of the work is done, and it feels great, and it's a good show, and there's a lot of satisfaction when you make just a really good show.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Now, I've been looking at your IMDb, and obviously, since you started the freelance part, you've been doing on a ton of different shows, some really cool shows, lots of really
Yeah.
fun shows,
Yeah.
for sure. So what were some of your favorites?
Oh gosh.
Because I know you're working on Cobra Kai now. That's your big
Yes.
show right now, right?
That's my show
And
right
we can
now.
talk about that, but I want to know some of the other shows that you worked on.
I mean, yeah, every show has its positives for different reasons. Curb was fun. Curb Your
You worked on
Enthusiasm,
Curb Your Enthusiasm?
season
Oh my
9.
gosh.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
That was fun. It was also it was like the longest schedule I've ever had. And I
Really?
don't really feel like I was that, I really did that much on that show. And yeah, it was a fun show at the end of the day. It was a very different process to make because they don't have scripts. They have outlines. They know
Yeah.
where they're going, but it really is improv for all takes and episodes. So that's why the cut process is so much longer, because Larry's in there trying to find the best needle in a haystack in these takes, and it's
I
a
love
lot
that
of fun.
show.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to watch him work. It was a lot of fun to to bring in the actors for ADR, and I mean, I wasn't running that when I was the second, but just being a fly on the wall on that one was a lot of fun.
Yeah. That's an interesting process. I can imagine Curb Your
Yeah.
Enthusiasm, especially like you said, like you can't really ADR things, or maybe they do ADR things. I guess they must, right?
Well, you can, yeah, but you may not realize the scene that comes out may not have been the scene he had in his head in the first place.
Right.
So things, I think things, they kind of, again, they knew where they were going, but they got there in different ways than I think he expected in some situations.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I Silicon Valley season 1, and then Baller season 1, and I did a little show called Getting On, which was fun. That was season 3. I do like the little under the radar shows, and that one was definitely smaller under the radar.
Really?
Great cast. Yeah, Laurie Metcalf and Alex. Oh, what was her name? I don't remember. She's on Marvelous Mrs. Mabel right now. Maple?
Oh, okay.
Maisel, thank you. I don't watch that one, obviously. Or it's good. But yeah, great cast. Really, really great cast. That was really my first time kind of interacting directly with the producers, actually, the EPs. My boss really empowered me. She said, if this is what I got bumped up from a post supervisor to an associate producer on that show. And my boss said, well, you need to ask them. You need to make that argument to them. And oof, that was scary for me, but I did it.
Okay.
And, again, super nice writers, EPs, like they were great. I've had a lot of luck working with some really great creative people. I hate to, not have a bad story to tell. I mean, I know everybody loves those salacious little insider peeks into the industry, but I've been very, very lucky. I consider myself very lucky to have worked with some really great people. I did Vice Principals after that. We did seasons 1 and 2 at the same time. That was a lot of fun. I mean, oh my God, so much fun. Different challenges on each show. Obviously.
That's a lot of HBO shows, obviously.
Well, yeah. And I was kind of in their HBO camp for a long time. And when I finally got out of HBO was when I was actually able to bump up to a producer role. So, you know, you have to take the leap. I could have been very comfortable in HBO for a long time, but they liked me in that second position. They were only going to max me out at a second/associate producer position. They're like, no, you're fine there. Good. And I'm like, cool. You know, I think I have, you know, more I want to learn and more I can offer. So I'm going to go do that. Thanks. The first show that I produced, I was the post producer on, I really loved this show, but it did not get an audience. It was called Sweet Vicious. It was on MTV. And this was in 2016, I think, and it was about young women in a fictitious college avenging sexual assaults. And it was a year or two early, and because then the next year is when Time's Up started happening, and men in the industry started falling like flies. Because word was getting out about their horrible, in some cases, really bad behavior, assaults and whatnot. And so it just, you know, it was a dramedy. It was an hour-long kind of drama, but with some comedic elements to it. And MTV just didn't know how to promote it, and it really disappeared. But that was such a great little show. Amanda Lasher was the showrunner, and we had another writer, but who developed it and wrote many of the episodes, was very pivotal in running it and the creative direction that it took. But it was really a great little show. Love that show. Oh my gosh, so much stress. My first time as a post producer, they hired me as a first time post producer, replacing somebody else. I was like, oh, okay. You guys are really hard up, aren't you? Sure, why not? I'll do it. But again, you learn from your mistakes. I'm not afraid of making mistakes, as I know I'll learn. I mean, sure, it sucks to do something wrong, to make a mistake. You don't want to be judged on that, and you hope nobody judges you permanently from that one mistake. And honestly, some people will, but sometimes you just have to make mistakes to find your way, and to at least know how you don't want to do something in the future. And that's almost as important as knowing how you do want to do something in the future. Yeah, after that was Curb. And then after that, oh God, what did I do after that? Oh, I did a show called Miracle Workers, season 1. Went out to Atlanta.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And that was the first time I was really involved in production as a post-producer. Oftentimes they kind of talk to us, but they kind of also ignore us in post when they're in production. But I was in Atlanta with the editorial team. I was on set for visual effects. That was a very visual effects heavy show. And again, back to visual effects, loved it. I was going to know exactly what was happening with my shots. I had a supervisor on set, but I want to make sure that everything's going well and going smoothly. So that was definitely an interesting experience. And parlayed that into season 2 of Cobra Kai was when I got started on that show. Again, another show that was really hard up for a post producer, because they hired me on day 1 of production of season 2. And it was an interview over FaceTime, because they were already in Atlanta shooting.
Okay.
But I think it's worked out.
Yeah. How long have you been on that show?
We are working on season 5 right now. So for my 4th season.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty great. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's definitely some job security that I think is, we back in the day, I mean, people were on shows. I know a post producer who was on 2 shows practically her whole career. She was on The Practice, and then she was on Grey's Anatomy. You don't get that kind of year after year after year on the same show anymore. But the good thing though too is that there are so many platforms now, and there's so much great content. There's really no gosh, there's hardly a way to not be employed right now in television.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's people who adapt to it and people who don't.
Yeah.
And those who adapt are going to thrive.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Now, okay, I do have a technical question because I know
Okay.
Cobra Kai is a Netflix show, right?
Correct.
Right. Okay. So I have heard that Netflix has a very specific way of finishing things to make sure that it looks good on Netflix.
Oh yeah.
That's different from other places, different than other finishing techniques. Is that true? Is there like a special secret sauce finishing for Netflix? I don't have to tell me what it is, but does that exist?
To be honest, I can't say if it does not exist other places.
Okay.
When I first started on Cobra Kai, we were airing on YouTube Red or whatever it was called.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So then Netflix picked it up and then aired season 3, which we had originally delivered to YouTube. And now season 4 just dropped recently. So season 4 was the first season that I finished specifically for Netflix. And the only thing that comes to mind is that we color in HDR, which, I mean, doesn't really seem like a secret sauce necessarily to me because my phone has HDR. But
Sure.
not everybody does color in that space or even finishes that way or delivers that way. And it's not really something that you can do after the fact. I mean, you can, but it costs a lot more money and takes a lot more time.
Right.
So, HDR is high dynamic range.
Right.
And big difference in coloring season 3 versus coloring season 4. Same colorist. And we color on Resolve. So it's a system that many other post houses have, and I'm sure that many post houses do finish this way, but I just don't know if it's unique to Netflix. So if you have a TV that can air in HDR, you can see, oh my gosh, there is a difference between HDR and SDR.
For sure. Yeah. It's just, there's something about like the way that colors are looking that are like, it's designed for that best experience.
Yeah.
They note that. Yeah. So it's kind of an interesting idea of like finishing for the TV, because a lot of places, for example, like movies, like let's take an Avenger film, right? They'll do HDR obviously for the film industry, but that HDR is different than what would have on your TV. So Netflix gears it towards your TV, which is kind of an interesting process.
Yes. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And much of what they do is based on how it's gonna play. How are you going to be able to play that in your home system? But also, you may not be able to play that now on your system, but you might be able to play like that in 5 years. So they're really looking to the future and how. I mean, the only reason why we're not delivering in 8K is because we don't shoot in 8K. We shoot in 4K. You know what I mean? So, but if you want to shoot in 8K, they'll take it. Even though, I mean, what consumer level TVs actually broadcast 8K? I mean, that's always been the struggle on file base for as long as I can remember. Yeah, exactly. There's a handful. Like, sure, if you have this like 24-seat personal theater in your home, sure, you can probably view in 8K. But there's always been this dance between what a camera in the file based world since 2011, what a camera can shoot, what a network can air or stream or release, and then what a consumer can see.
Right.
And oftentimes there's no continuity there. At least not yet. And, you know, as we've gotten into the file-based workflows and the file-based cameras and, you know, everything has just multiplied and exploded. There are so many different options out there now in just the last 10 years. I mean, it's really kind of mind-boggling how fast this technology in this industry is growing.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, it's interesting that was the thing. I mean, I remember I do remember even at Method when we were there and the Red came out, because I think Andy Lesniak had a Red camera and we're like, ooh.
Oh,
and he was trying to and he was trying to figure out how to mount his Canon lenses to the Red camera. Cause that was like, you bought this camera and like, you got to put some lenses on it. And they're like, and so like, how am I going to, and so he was like figuring that out. So it was just, I do remember that specifically. I was like, that's right. All that came together. And that was just around 2000 and I guess 2008, 2009. Yeah.
And the thing at the time with the Red camera that I remember specifically is because I'm looking at this from a post-production perspective is the fact that I don't remember the exact type of file that the Red camera generated, but you had to transcode it before you could either get it into the Avid or get those files into a finishing workflow. That file type was did not talk to the systems that were being used at the time. And that was a huge headache. So then when the next version of the camera came out, I think they may have worked on that a little bit, but then Alexa came out, they shot ProRes and everything talks to ProRes. So, everybody was like, oh, Alexa.
Yeah. I think it was a very thing. And it was not just that. It was like the raw formats had to be debared. It was a whole thing. It was, it was kind of, it was like,
it's so funny because whatever the sensor didn't, I remember this from Southland, the sensor didn't react to fast motion very well. Like we'd sometimes get like green edges on the actors on frames. And my client was like, what is that? What are you guys doing? And we're like, that's not us. That's in your sensor, man. Sorry. Like that's just what the camera records.
And then there was the rolling shutter issues with the first Reds. And,
oh my gosh.
Yep. Yeah, it's true. It's cool.
It's crazy to think it's only been 10 years. Whoa.
I know. Oh. Yeah. And now like it's pretty much the standard. Everyone, that's the way things work. Yeah. So that's awesome. Well, listen, it's been an hour. I'm sure we can keep talking about technical weird stuff. But it's so cool to talk to you and to hear all these amazing things you're doing. I'm really excited about it. I love what you're doing. I'm so glad you said the things you did about producing and about the joys of coming together because it resonates to me, and I'm really, really very, very impressed with the amazing things you're doing. So it's so great to reconnect after all these years.
So great. I'm so tickled that you invited me onto your podcast. This is the first podcast I've ever recorded, so that's kind of fun. And you get that honor.
I appreciate it. I know how hard it is for introverts to do that, but I try to make it very comfortable for you.
Yeah. Very comfortable. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for being on. I appreciate it.
Oh, thanks so much, Chris. Talk to you soon.